Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I spent the last 2+ decades of my life. Here's a little video clip that was sent to me by the homie. The incident I was sharing with you, where 3 natives was jumping one of the homeboys, and the homie Sam came running out of the shower. You can see him coming out of the shower in a little bit to help out the homie. There he goes right there. Like I said, when the shit pops off, man, you gotta look out the window, and if it's got something to do with your people, you better come out, aid, and assist. You see him over there in the corner punishing dude. Right there. That's the homie. He's active. He's with the funk. But this is just a little bit to show you guys that, the stories that I be sharing with you guys is as real as it gets, man. And at any given time in the penitentiary, shit can pop off. It might not have anything to do with you, but you might be caught up in the middle of it. And if it's got anything to do with your people, you better step up. Because if you don't, you're going to end up like them 2 dudes at the end of this story. And that's just the way it is. We can agree with it or not, but that's life in the USP, United States Penitentiary. Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I spent the last 2+ decades of my life. A few months back, I shared you a story about my homeboy Sam. We call him Stutter Sam because he has a really pronounced stutter. When he gets excited, you can't really understand anything he's trying to say. But just a little background on Sam. If you guys missed that episode, him and his homeboys went up to Montana. They went and robbed a casino up in Montana. Ended up catching 20-something years. I met him in Atwater around maybe 2012, 2013. He's the one that knocked out the GD dude when we got into the riots with the GD. So he's active, but he's a good homie, you know what I mean? But he's one of the homies that he ain't going for nothing, right? So just a couple months back, he had called me and he was in the SHU. He said he was locked up under investigation because they had ran the cameras back and saw that he was the last person that went into the cell where they found these 2 dudes stabbed up pretty bad. Well, just last week, he's at the transit center. So he gave me a call when he was in Oklahoma, let me know that he was getting transferred from Pollock to Hazleton. He's in Hazleton now. He just hit the yard yesterday, a couple days ago. So what's today? Today's Thursday. So on Tuesday, he hit the yard in Hazleton. So on the call, I asked him, so what happened? You guys, they convict you for the stabbings? He's like, yeah. They got him for stabbing 2 people. So now that his case is finalized and settled, he didn't catch a new case over it. They just sat him in the SHU for about 6 months and transferred him. But now that the case is all resolved, I asked his permission if I could share the story of what happened. And he's like, yeah, go ahead, man. So, but just a little background before we get into it. The 2 homies that got stabbed, one's name is Dennis. Dennis is an old Filipino dude. His name is Dennis Samoy. And he was a good friend of mine. I used to play handball with him, deal business with him. We were in Atwater together for about 5 years. And from everything I know, he's always been a good dude, right? But that's from outside looking in, because we didn't live in the unit together. And for me, when I run into people show me a different side of them than they might show other people, out of whatever respect, out of love, and all the rest. But there was an incident in Pollock a few months back. I got the video of it. I'm going to try to upload the video, but it doesn't have any sound, where 3 natives was jumping a Korean dude, and Dennis stayed in his room. Sam was in the shower. So when he heard the commotion, he looked out and he seen that there was 3 natives stomping out one of the homies. So Sam comes out of the shower. You know, he just put on his pants. He ain't got no shirt on. In the video, you'll see that he's got long hair, no shirt on, and a pair of khakis. And he comes out and helps the homie and stomps out a couple of the native dudes. Well, from then, they've been having an issue because, you know, when shit pops off, like I told you, you got to stick your head out and you got to go to your corners and you got to do your part. But a lot of these older dudes that were in the system before me, they were more on the time, you know, just, it's my, you know, if it ain't got nothing to do with me, I ain't got nothing to do with it type of mentality. You know, unless it's one of their road dogs or something. You know, but for me, you know, even if I don't like you, if you're Asian or Islander and you get into it, I'm going to aid and assist. Because for me, it's about my reputation. I'm not going to be on a compound and somebody's going to be over there talking about, oh yeah, Major let the homie get stomped out. But also, I'm not going to let another race just take off on the homie. If it's a one-on-one, you know, that's different. They can go in the cell and go head up and win or lose. You know, they can end it or resolve it, however. But when you have somebody else jumping in and it's multiple person on one, that's a violation. No other race is going to allow that. If no other race is going to allow that, what do I look like allowing that to happen to one of my homies? So like I said, you know, I've known Dennis for a while. He's been down over 30 years. He's in there for a couple of bodies. And from my perspective, getting to know him and seeing the interaction with him and other people, people gave him a lot of space because, you know, they think he's some crazy dude or whatever. But he always carried himself in a respectable manner. But you know, sometimes it's like, you know, when you see your homies just on occasion, you don't really know what they're really like. For me, it's when somebody's not looking. It's what you do when somebody's not watching is really an indication of who you really are. And the conversation I've had with Dennis one time when we were walking the track, you know, he was talking about, you know, he don't need no gang, that he walked by himself, he ain't into the group shit, this and that. And he was kind of talking down to dudes that were gang members. And as you know, I'm a gang member, you know. I'm not a former gang member, I'm not an ex-gang member, but at this time in my life, I'm not active. I'm not, you know, running around the streets or anything. I'm trying to build my life and go in a different direction. But as far as my status, my ranking within my homies, it's still solid. I function with them. I go to their kids' wedding. I get invited to whatever. I'm just not active, right? So, but you know, I listen to everything. Everything that people tell me, I have a pretty good memory. As you know, I wouldn't be able to sit here and share the stories with you guys if my memories were shot. But, so we had that conversation walking the track about, you know, the next generation. Because his generation, I guess when they were on the street, they really didn't like have gangs and all that. But, you know, my generation and the generation behind us, a lot of the dudes that go into the penitentiary when they're Asian or Islander, they are from gangs. So, again, he was talking about, like, he's not a member, you know, he doesn't really respect these dudes that's running around that need to be part of a gang and all this and all that. But, like, but when we was in Atwater, we used to go out and play handball together, right? And you know, it gets hot out there, so sometimes you take off your shirt and you're out there playing handball. So when he took off his shirt and we're out there playing handball, I seen he had a tattoo. And I recognized the tattoo. And the tattoo belonged to a group called PF, Pacific Family, which is a prison gang. You know, these guys started this PF wanting to be like the big homies for the Asian Islanders. But the problem with that is that all the Asian Islanders that come into the feds were all from different areas. We're all from our own respective gangs from wherever it is that we come from. And we don't have no big homies. But the reason they weren't able to carry it like they were the big homies was because they didn't really have no standards on who they recruited. And a lot of dudes that were part of this Pacific Family gang, a lot of them were a bunch of dope fiends, cutthroat, piece of shit, and some of them were busters, right? I had my run-ins with one of their members, and I sent him out to the hospital for a couple weeks, right? Punctured his lungs and all the rest of it. So when I seen that he had this tattoo of this PF, it makes me, look at the conversation I had with him earlier in a different light, right? But these dudes that came before us, these older dudes, they weren't really about the community. You know, when I first come into the system, yeah, there's an Asian Islander car because that's what we get thrown into as the others because everybody else are aligned. The whites, the blacks, the Mexicans, and all the different gangs that are within each of those groups. But with the Asian Islander, when I first came in there, I'm usually the only Cambodian on the yard. When I was in Atwater, there was 4 other Cambodians with me. That was the most Cambodians I ever been around with. But outside of that, Victorville, I was the only one. Florence, I was the only one. Beaumont, I was the only one. Being the only Cambodian. And the majority of the groups that are in prison when it comes to the Asians are Vietnamese. There's a lot of Vietnamese in the system. Chinese, and Guamanians. So when I first come to the system, all these dudes, they would just hang out with each other. Yeah, we all fall under the umbrella of Asian Islander, but there was always a separation until me and a couple of my dudes that was in my generation hit the system. Every yard I went to, I unified, all the Asian Islanders. And I made it known that, hey, if we're riding under this umbrella, then if we're eating at the same table, then when shit pops off, everybody better be accountable. If not, don't tell them dudes that you're a part of us. And if you're not part of us, then you can't be on the yard because you're not going to walk around enjoying the benefit of the umbrella, but when shit pop off or when your hands got to get dirty, you're like, oh, I ain't got nothing to do with that. I don't go for that. So, as you know, when I share these stories, I don't sit here and pat myself on the back or anything like that. But I can really claim credit for unifying the Asian Islanders everywhere I've been and created a standard of how we carried ourselves. Because again, like I told you, when I first went to the system, I had a couple of runs in with other groups, and they were like, man, the Asian Islanders really don't check paperwork, this and that. Because the older ones, like I said, when they come into the system, they're just about them, and they got homies that come from their islands or from their area that might not all be kosher, but they put their friendship above, the standards that we expect men to be according to this life. And they had a reputation of having anybody and anything amongst them. But when I come through, after I left Lompoc and went to Victorville, we changed that. Like now, everybody that comes off the bus, they get the paperwork checked. If you don't check out, then you gotta check in. or get stomped off the yard. So going back to Dennis, with the incident with the homies, when the homie got jumped and he didn't come out, and the homie Sam harbored some feelings about it, right? But I guess at the same time, they did some business. Now, Senator Dennis is serving 2 life sentences, and he likes to put it out there like, hey, I'm a lifer. Like, don't fuck with me, I ain't got nothing to lose type shit. But the homie Sam is like, I don't give a fuck if you got a life sentence or what it is you got on your case. You owe me money. So you need to go ahead and pay up. And now his cellie is a louse dude from Atlanta. I was over there with him when we was in the Smooth. He was in a few cells down from me. When we wrecked, they would put him in a wreck cage next to me. Because the way my jacket is, my background, they don't want me being around my homies. So they always try to separate me from my homeboys and stuff, because they think that when we get together, we're going to be too hard to handle because of all the violence on my case and because of my assault on staff. But we would go out, and that's the only place that I ever met him and knew him from was in Lewisburg in the Smooth program. But through the course of my bid, I've heard stories about him, and a lot of shit that they speak about is shit that gives the impression that he's a grimy dude. He'll steal from you, he'll fuck you over, and all the rest. So, with the situation in Pollock, the homie got tired of that shit. The homie got tired of Dennis, pulling him off on the money he owed him. And then he already knew Trigger was a piece of shit. So he went up in the cell. They were both sleeping. That's why I shared your story. That's why I shared the story that at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm up. Regardless if I'm on the yard, regardless if I'm in the shoe, or in the Smooth program. I've not taken a nap in the penitentiary for over 20-something years. And the reason why I don't is because I've seen so many incidents where something pops off at breakfast, but you over here in your bunk snoozing away, and the motherfuckers that get in the incident, they're homies, they come back in the unit, they see your ass is sleeping, they run up in there and put holes in you. So this really stories to emphasize that. These 2 dudes were sleeping in the cell. The homie Sam went in there, got the dude on the bottom bunk, and stuck him up. Poked holes in him, and the dude and Trigger was on the top bunk, because he went in there for Dennis, because Dennis was the one that owed him money. So he went in there to punish Dennis. But while he was punishing Dennis, his cellie woke up. It was Trigger. And when his cellie woke up, his cellie tried to get off the bunk and bust a move. And Sam grabbed him, got on top of the bunk, and started stabbing him up on the top of the bunk until he started crying that he didn't want no problem, want no more, or whatever. After that, Sam left the room. So later on today, the people walk, when they do their rounds, the CO do their round, they see these 2 dudes on the floor all leaking, bloodied up. And that's how the homie Sam ended up in the shoe. I emphasize, you have to be a person of your words in there. You can get away with not paying this person or that person because you think you're tougher than them, or because you think they're lame or whatever. And they might be. They might be. But when you have a habit of doing that, you start getting ahead of yourself and thinking that maybe you can do it to anybody and everybody. Like the saying going, man, if you're looking for it, you're going to get it. You might be able to get away with disrespecting this dude because he might actually be a lame. But if you develop that habit and you end up disrespecting somebody else, and they so happen not to be a lame, then eventually one of these dudes that you're burning, one of these dudes that you're not paying, and one of these dudes that you're disrespecting is not the kind of person that's going to accept that and walk away from that. So through the course of my bid, I've seen it. I've seen these dudes that have a habit of not keeping their words, not paying their debt, not coming through on their deals, and thinking that nobody's going to do anything to them because they got bodies on their case, or because they're known for, not being afraid to stab somebody, or because they're big. And every single time, these dudes that think like that always end up getting punished. And when they get punished, because the dudes that's going up to them, they know, okay, this dude's a big dude. This dude's known for stabbing people. This dude's got a life sentence. He ain't got nothing to lose. So when they go up to these individuals, they're not going over there half-assed. They're going over there to slaughter them. And time again, I see it happen. That's why on my videos, I emphasize and stress integrity. I've been on a lot of yards by myself, but every single yard that I've been to, I've been able to do my time the way I want to, just like any other yard, regardless if I have 100 homies with me or I'm by myself. Because one thing I don't do is underestimate the next person. But not only that, I'm not out to go looking to disrespect anybody or to burn anybody, because I don't have anything. When I got locked up, all my peoples got locked up and we were all incarcerated. And I don't have no money. I wasn't a dope boy on the streets. I was out here robbing shit. So when I got locked up, I was broke. The only thing I had was my face, my heart, and my nuts. And through the course of the 20 years that I've done time, I've been able to get whatever's on the yard just on my word. In the beginning it was a little bit because nobody knew who I was. And just like out here in the streets, you have to build your credits with the bank and other companies. It's the same thing in there. Somebody's going to trust you with something small first. Then when you come back correct, next time you might be able to get a little more. Before I left, I was able to get whatever I want. Anything that touched the yard, no matter the amount, if I know I can handle it, I'll ask for it. And every time I asked, it didn't matter if they were white, black, Mexican, they had no problems putting it in my hands. And I can tell them, hey, I'll pay you in 2 weeks or I'll pay you in a month. But whatever I tell them, I make sure that I take care of it. Because no matter who you are, when you're locked up, you're always relying on somebody else. Even if you're the dope man or whatever, you're not bringing it in yourself. You got to be able to trust other people to make the moves for you. And sometimes that shit don't go right. Your lick falls off. But if you're trying to hustle, you want to be able to have a relationship with other people that's hustling to be able to get the things that you want. Because you can't control anything when you're in the penitentiary. When you're in the penitentiary, 100% you're relying on somebody else. Even if you got money on the streets. You can't move it yourself. You got to get your girl to move it. You got to get your brother to move it. Or you got to get your homie to move it. And sometimes when you call home, they're not able to just get up right there and then and make the move for you. But at the same time, when you're in there and you know you're good, you don't want to be sitting around waiting for the money to be moved before you get whatever you try to get in your hands so you can do what you do. So your word has to be good. Hey, let me get that. I'll take care of it before the week is up. You know, my family's out there, they running around. When they got time, they're going to take care of it. And if people know your word is good, they're going to put it in your hands. Now, they're trusting you. So when they trust you with that, you can't come back later with excuses because you already got the stuff already. They already done their part by giving it to you. So now you got to take care of your part by paying it. And when they come up and ask you, hey, why hasn't this been taken care of? And you keep coming up with stories or excuses, and hey, it might be true. It might not be no game. But from the other person's perspective, it's like, man, I'm not trying to hear that shit no more. And that's what happened with the homie Sam. Whatever reason, the dude kept playing him. And Sam's like, hey, man, I ain't trying to hear that shit no more. And went up in there and bodied 2 people. Welcome to the USP.